Here we go.
Tell me what to do
Going live.
to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Luss, the Pond Boss, coming at you live from the chilling down hills and balmy parts of North Texas. Holy cow, there's Wayne Lancaster already checking in. Wayne and Josie on their Wednesday night date, hanging out with yours truly. Glad to see you guys. Tonight's topic I'm going to talk about is your pond at 30,000 feet. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the things you're thinking about at 30,000 feet, and then we're going to kind of come in for a final approach and land that thing. You ever wondered about that final approach thing? What if they mess it up? Does that make it a semi-final approach? I don't know if I like that final approach idea or not. So anyway, I want to talk about that. So you guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comment section. Click like, share this to your timeline, share this video. You'll be eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. There it is. There's a live hat. Well, as live as it can get. And a Pond Boss mug that knows how to, say it with me, keep hot things hot and cold things cold. It doesn't know how to do it, but it does it. Pond Boss Magazine, folks. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and lasts a year where that date's gone just in a few hours. So welcome aboard. Glad y'all are here. I want to spend a little time and just kind of talk about a few things. Let me see here. Who all we got today? Make sure I'm looking at the right one. Look at there. There's Matt Reardon checking in. Michael Gray. Got to talk to Michael today. Michael's got a story coming out in the next issue of Pond Boss about renovating a pond that was probably 80% full of silt. Visualize 2,200 off-road dump truck loads of silt coming out of a pond. That's amazing. There's Matt Reardon, John Funk, Wyatt checking in from, see, John's up in Michigan. Wyatt's in Colorado. There's Blair Ulring, Tom Blasdale, Nathan Reisdorf. John Funk says, fun watching Bastion at the top of the pond yesterday in the 70s. Looking for lunch. Looking for lunch in all the wrong places. I guess up there, that's the way it goes. There's Mike Cottrell checking in from around Palo Pinto County, I do believe. So today's topic I want to talk about is your pond at 30,000 feet. You know what's really amazing, good gosh, 25 years ago, way before Al Gore invented the internet, whenever that was, if you wanted information, you either had to go figure it out by doing it, or you had to talk to somebody that's done it, or you had to go find a book, you know, that you could read about, or you had to go find some seasoned veteran. Well, 25 years ago, there weren't very many seasoned veterans managing ponds and lakes. There were a handful, but not very many. Zach Bollinger checking in from the North Country. Everybody's kind of cool up there where Zach is. Tim Stewart checking in from Florida. He's wearing shorts. Calvin Goforth. Good to see you guys. Danny Mack checking in from Bexar County, the bastion of liberalism. I'm not talking politics, I promise. Vito, hola, hello. Hello, Vito. I love Vito. Vito's just up the road, got a great sense of humor. He's raising children. Vito's raising kids. In order to raise kids, you have to have a sense of humor. Isn't that right, Vito? Well, Vito's got one. So, there's Robert Dyer. So let's talk about the pond at 30,000 feet. You know, in today's world, all you got to do is take your little miniature device that fits in your pocket, where when I was in college, the computer took up 4 floors of a building that covered pretty much a city block at Texas A&M. Now, you got all this in a little device called an iPhone, a little bitty deal that you can carry in your pocket. You can play games, you can make phone calls, you can communicate with people without talking to them, this texting thing, which sometimes that's kind of convenient. But you know what? If you want to find out stuff about your ponds at the 30,000 foot level, you go to the University of Google, I call it. So you got a question, you put the question on Google. It sends you to Pond Boss. Well, you know, we do have a presence. So the thing about the University of Google is, how do you know what's true? And how do you know what's fiction? And how do you know what's theory? How do you know what's experience? And then you know what? Back in the old days, I remember when my mama had the very best pie crust on the planet. She had a little sifter, this little flour sifter. And I guess back then I remember flour kind of came in chunks, and she didn't want any chunks in her pie crust. She made the very best apple pies on the planet. I still love apple pies. So she would take this sifter, put a cup of flour in it, turn a little handle, and through this screen wire, the little bitty fragments of flour would come out. So she could have finely sifted flour. So how do you know how to sift through the stuff that comes out through the University of Google? You know, you get all these opinions. It's kind of like watching ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox, you know, ABC, PBS. You know, you got to sift through a lot of crap before you can figure out and deduce what it is that you consider to be true that will work for you. Now, as you guys know, I mean, I've pounded this through this broadcast for the last almost 3 years now. 3 years. Who would have thought of that? About how to take the fundamental principles of, say with me, happy water. You got to have happy water. You don't have happy water, nothing else matters. You know, then you got to have the right kind of habitat to support the species that you want to grow, whether they be plants, crustaceans, or gigantic fish. Then you got to have the right food chain. Then you got to have appropriate genetics for the sizes and for the fish that you want to thrive or the plants that you want to thrive. Then you got to have a harvest plan. So there's 5 fundamental concepts that I pound in this broadcast over and over and over. I'm going to take those with me to my grave, but I've shared them with you so you can share them with everybody else. So those are the fundamentals, and you start at the 30,000 foot level. I'll always remember something Ray Scott told me, the guy that founded BASS. Ray Scott said, Bob, you know, he says, every time I go to the airport here in Montgomery, Alabama, and I'm going to fly somewhere, he says, it just makes my heart feel good when the plane takes off and we get up to 25 or 30,000 feet, and you look out that side window over there and see all those beautiful little sparkles down there. Well, in the United States, there's 4.5 to 6.5 million private ponds and lakes. And it's our job with the ponds we have and lakes we have to be the best stewards that we can be. You know, so understanding your pond at the 30,000 foot level is real important. Plus, it helps to uncomplicate your management strategy. Now, here's what I mean by that. Keep in mind those 5 fundamental concepts: happy water, habitat, food chain, genetics, and a harvest plan. Every pond is like a garden. At some point, it's going to produce a bounty. You need to harvest it, or Mother Nature will, in the form of river otters. I was talking to somebody, can't remember who it was. I was talking to a lady the other day, and she was asking me if otters were bad for her pond. I said, well, do you think they're cute? She said, oh yeah, I think they're darling. But I saw one swimming with its mate in my pond upside down backwards and had a dead fish laying on its belly. I said, was that your fish? She said, yes. I said, did you kind of like that fish? She said, yeah. I said, now do you like otters? You know, she said, no, I really didn't. So understanding from the 30,000 feet, those basic concepts, that allows you to dig into your management strategy and get specific. Because I'm telling you, when you go to Google or any of the other search engines and you start rooting around trying to find out information, there's way too much information out there. So understanding those 5 fundamental concepts at the 30,000 foot level, and then allows you to dig down deeper into each one of those concepts. So when your pond isn't performing like you want it to, what can you do about it? Start at the 30,000 foot level. Look at your water quality. Is your water happy? Does it have some clarity to it? Is it fertile? I mean, we're going into the winter now. Water's getting cool. Our water temperatures have fluctuated from the low 50s. Well, they were in the upper 70s. Cold snap blew through, stay cold. We were in the 30s for 3 or 4 days with highs in the 40s. Temperatures plummeted to the low 50s, upper 40s. Then the temperature pushed back up into the upper 60s. Fish fed like crazy. Now it's fixing to go right back down. It's probably 65, 64 degrees now, which is prime feeding temperatures. So as long as you understand what's going on with those 5 concepts, then you will be more capable of being a good steward of your water. Now, think about that for a minute. I was talking to a guy today in Oklahoma that's getting ready to build a pretty nice lake, a 6 or 7 acre lake, and he doesn't know what he doesn't know. So as I was talking to him and coaching him through the process of building a lake, the main point I wanted to drive home to him was this. You need to plan this pond out properly. We got Michael Gray on here. He'll be the first one to step up there and tell you the dam, when you build a dam, it has a job. Its job is to retain water, impound it, and then release excess water in an orderly fashion downstream. Now keep in mind, the minute that big silver-bladed bulldozer cranks up, or that trackhoe with a 9-yard bucket on the front of it starts jerking dirt out, you're changing that environment and that ecosystem for a minimum of 5 generations beyond you. Michael Gray turned in a story yesterday for the upcoming issue of Pond Boss where he renovated a pond that's 50 years old. Now that 50-year-old pond's 3 acres sitting inside of a 600-acre watershed. Now do the math on that. And it's sitting in the hills of Tennessee. So every time it rains, water's flowing through that pond. Every time it rains, if there's a fraction of an inch of runoff, it's coming into that pond. Well, over a 50-plus year span, that pond completely filled full of silt. It was less than a foot deep over a third of it, less than 2 feet deep over half of it. He drained the pond, scooped out almost 25,000 cubic yards of wet, gooey muck, put it in dump trucks and hauled it out just to get the pond back to where it was 50 years ago. So as you think about these things, keep in mind that when you start moving dirt, building a pond, you're going to change that ecosystem for a minimum of 5 generations past you. 50 years for a pond is not that really long of a time. If that person back then had figured out what he should have or she should have, that 3-acre pond probably should have been more like 15 or 20 acres with an appropriate spillway and guiding the water in there via some cofferdams or some silt dams upstream. Now I'm going to stop a minute, and I was just kind of digging through some of my stuff. If you're getting ready to build a lake, you need this book. This is Mike Octo's book called Just Add Water. This is Mike Octo's 40-plus years of earth-moving experience. That's him right there. There's Mike. And I've had him on my show before, and I want to tell you, he is one of the most premier, excellent men on the planet and a lake builder, by the way. And so I would spend a little time studying that. Now, at that 30,000-foot level, as you start drilling down based on your goals, now your goals are going to get specific. But when we start at the 30,000-foot level, you're understanding all these different concepts, the 5 basic concepts that I'm preaching about. And then you're going to take each one of those concepts and kind of get down into the details of each one of those concepts relative to what you want for your pond or your lake. So I'm going to kind of scroll back up here and take a look and see, holy cow, I am so far behind on this stuff. Let me see here what everybody's got going on. Bear with me a minute. All right, let's see here. Calvin, go for it. Zach Bollinger, Tim Stewart. Yep. Got you guys. Robert Dyer, John Funk, Troy Todd. John Funk, 40 degrees in Upper Michigan. 40 degrees? Dude, it might as well be 80 where you are. I mean, that's crazy. Yep, University of Google, Pond Boss. John Wilson, good to see John. John's in the pond management business there in Ohio, and he is truly one of the pioneers and truly one of the superstars in the pond management business in his part of the plan. I see David Schneiderman checking in. Tim Stewart got 254 to 8-inch bluegill and 100 pounds of tilapia out of a 1/20th acre pond. Only had 2 tilapia in March. Well, you got you some little underwater rabbits there, Mr. Stewart. Hope you ate some of them. I got some tilapia back here in one of the tanks. We're going to butcher those things tomorrow or the next day. David Schneiderman, one of our sponsors with Easy Dock Texas. If you're looking for a floating dock, Easy Dock Texas is the place to look. Check them out. He's got some really interesting configurations. They're very expensive. Well, he'll tell you they're not, because you get what you pay for. You know, and the thing I like about Easy Dock is they're easy to install. David's going to help you with it. And if I'm going to talk about David, I need to talk about Texas Hunter products as well. Texas Hunter, fish feeders, and Bobby West or Jacob West called me the other day and said, hey, can you help us get some deer blinds? Well, yeah, you bet. I mean, when Texas Hunter started, that's what they sold most of was deer blinds. Then they got into the feeder business, and then they diversified into the fish feeder business. But if you get a minute, go to TexasHunterProducts.com and take a look at their lineup. They got some good stuff. And Purina Mills. Now, right now, we're at the peak time of the fall to be feeding your fish. If you're not feeding your fish, or if you think you need to back off now, don't do it. Now, the water temperature is going to go up and down, which is going to change the fish's behavior. I'm a firm believer, especially in the Midwest, south of the Mason-Dixon line, feed those fish until the water temperature drops into the low 40s, or they stop behaving or stop coming to the feed. When they stop coming to the feed, back it off. Because if they don't go into the winter with some stores of fat, they're going to metabolize their flesh. If they metabolize their flesh, then they got to regain it. If they have to regain it, that takes time, and you're losing valuable growth time to grow those fish up to bigger sizes. Jake Hughes, Christopher Aguilar. I got to talk to Christopher earlier this week. Vito speaking Spanish to us. Christopher's daddy's here. Yes, he is. Here we go. Let's see what else we got. Jason Lennox, good guy to follow. He's good. He's tagging people. Hey, tag some of your friends. Let them see what's going on here. We got to get our viewership up a little bit. I'm kind of contemplating on how to do that, because I noticed this the last few shows that our audience is dropping some, and I don't know if that's the Facebook algorithms or if it's the fact that people are leaving Facebook in droves. I'd like to hear your opinions about that. Just message me on this video. Do it at the end of the show. Just say, hey, I'm leaving Facebook, or I'm hanging out, or tell me what you're thinking, because with the social dissent and the things going on with social media now, I watched the movie Social Dilemma a few days ago, and I get it. You know, so I'm thinking about what to do about it. Dave Weber said, I woke up this morning a free man in an English-speaking country. Thank you to each and every one of you veterans. They're absolutely true. Wayne Lancaster is one of those. We're glad to see Wayne out here. Salute to you guys. And Veterans Day is a big deal. You know, I've got a son that was in the United States Army National Guard, served time in Iraq. You know, and he talks about it to this day with some degree of pride and some degree of anxiety, you know. And I know it impacted him immensely. So many thanks to our veterans. Danny Mack, hey, my little pond is 3.5 years old. Thank God you started to reach out and run your videos. You can thank Debbie for that. You know, I don't know I think I've told this before, but part of the reason I do this is Debbie loves to watch Tim Allen on Last Man Standing. And if you've not seen that show, it's pretty darn funny. But what Tim Allen does at the end of each show, he does about a 30-second video blog where he throws some kind of a lesson out there. Well, Debbie, every time she watched that show, she'd point her finger at me and say, you need to do that. You could do that. I would like to see you do that. And finally, you know, she just kind of kept going at me like that. And I said, you know what? If you'll build me a set, I'll do it. There it is. She built me a set, and we do it. So here we go. There's Fred Bingaman checking in. Good to see Fred. I hope Connie's healing well. Connie had a little misfortune. She fell and broke her leg, so she's having to heal up from that. So I guess now Fred has to use his own phone. Give Connie our love. Josie's talking about Happy Veterans Day. Exactly right. Bill Russell. Joby Howe. Just want to first let you know I really enjoy the live question and answer session as you do. Truly a wealth of information. I'm located in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have a 4-acre pond that has a really nice selection of bass in it. But unfortunately, in the spring, it gets unfishable due to the vegetation along the edges. Now that everything is starting to die off, I have a weed rake that has big razor blades on it. Do you think it makes any sense to go through and crop all the existing weeds out that's starting to die? Also, any other thoughts on what I could do to stop this from coming back? Absolutely. You bet. I'm going to tell you this. If you're willing to cut those weeds and rake them out and pile them on the shore, that helps, because what that does is it removes the nutrients. Now, what weeds have to have, now, of course, first of all, I'm going to tell you this. I think some species of native plants in moderation in a pond is a healthy thing. You know, not only do anglers love it, I see Trey Carpenter checking in. Trey, I guarantee you, when Trey climbs in his kayak and goes pond fishing, he's looking for those weed beds, and he's going to go angle right up toward those things and catch fish out of them. I believe in aquatic plants in moderation. I believe they play a role. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you, I know that. I know they play a role. The native species of plants are habitat for fish. They provide fish a safe haven. To a smaller extent, they supply some food, because periphyton grows on the underneath leaves of American pondweed, for example. Snails feed on that. Red ear eats snails. Big bass eat red ear. So, you know, all these things interact. But to answer your question, if you, in order for you to have plants, you got to have three things come together. You got to have the right temperature, which you can't do anything about. You got to have sunlight penetration, which you can do something about. You got to have food, which is expensive to change. As long as those three things come together, plants are going to grow. Now, let's go back to that sunlight thing. As long as sunlight can penetrate into the water to where those plants grow, they're going to grow. Now, the different species of plants have different habitat requirements, have different temperature requirements, and they all need food. You know, coontail, for example, coontail migrates through the water column. It's not rooted. But curly-leaf pondweed, sago pondweed, hydrilla, you know, some of the emerge plants like primrose, cattails, they all grow from the bottom up. So if you can minimize sunlight penetration next spring, then you're going to minimize the volume of water and the area of water those plants can grow in. Now, there's two ways to do that. One is with a dye, which you can do that in the winter. Now, listen to me. I'm not telling you to go use dye. If you use dye in May, you've completely eliminated the chance that you're going to create a food chain for your newly hatched fish, and your survival rates of fish are going to plummet. So in the springtime, in the southern states especially, I'm a big believer in fertility. Now, northern states, typically when the plants go dormant and they decompose, they release their nutrients, and in the springtime, you get a plankton bloom. So here's where I'm going for you. We'll back up here. Just for you, Joby, what I wanted to tell you is pulling those plants out is a good thing. Pull them out. Now what that does is it takes the nutrients that it took to grow those plants, and you extract the nutrients from the water. If you just let those plants die and fall where they are, or if you were to use a herbicide on them 2 months ago, they're going to release their nutrients to be available for plants next year. So raking them out, pulling them out, that's a good thing if you're willing to do it. Now, what can you do next year? Minimize the water's visibility in the area that those plants grow, and you're going to diminish the odds of plants growing in the deeper water. There's your answer. Let me see here. Let me go down just a little bit, see where we are. Billy Birch checking in. Catfish Birch checking in from Southeast Texas. Are tilapia worth stocking in the Cincinnati, Ohio area for vegetation control? I'll tell you this, Joby. Tilapia are grazers that feed primarily on algae. They're not real good for controlling other kinds of plants. You know, they won't eat cattails. They can't effectively graze out bushy pondweed, or Illinois pondweed. They can't graze that out. But what they can do is eat algae. Now, one thing you got to be careful about is whether tilapia are legal in Ohio or not. I don't have any idea. You need to do your homework on that. I know that in Missouri they're not. In Illinois they're not. Wouldn't surprise me that if in Ohio they're not. I don't know. Have no idea. But they're good to help control filamentous algae. That's what they do. Other than that, they're the wrong tool in your toolbox. Jeff Wallen, thank you for your time. I was cleaning the edge of the pond, found 1.5-inch tadpoles. Thought it was late to see them in central Illinois. Very likely those are bullfrog tadpoles. Here's something not many people know. It takes 2 years for a bullfrog tadpole to hatch, grow up, and turn into a bullfrog. So if you're seeing tadpoles this time of year, probably bullfrog tadpoles. If they're kind of a light green, same color as a bullfrog, they're probably bullfrog tadpoles, and they'll turn into a frog next year. There's Mike Augustine. Good to see Mike. Hadn't seen Mike in a while. I kind of lurk on his Facebook page every once in a while because he has a lot of fun. All right, Christopher Aguilar, his wife is officially a doctor in education as of today. Well, congratulations, dude. Give her our highest regards and wish her luck on teaching you anything. Anthony Abate, this is the first notification over that you've gotten in a while. Maybe an algorithm issue. Very well could be, because I know Anthony from Chicago, Illinois, he started off watching this show way back 2.5 years ago. Glad to see Anthony here. Chuck Brinkman checking in from Missouri. Vito, many thanks to our veterans. Here. Billy Birch, it's an honor to, you guys check out Billy Birch's page. Go see Billy Birch. Billy Birch has got a cool program where he'll take veterans fishing, catfish fishing primarily, but he does some really good stuff. There's Ron Arduin, Paul Tuzzolino. Paul has got a story coming up in the January-February issue of Pond Boss. You guys, if you haven't subscribed to Pond Boss, here it is right here. $35 a year. This is the November-December issue. The cover here, see this? Live and in person. This photo was taken by our good friend Paul J. Tuzzolino. And he is an outstanding photographer, and he's going to have the cover of the next issue of Pond Boss as well, plus a story in there. In this issue of Pond Boss, good gosh, we've got Mark McDonald wrote a story there. Our founding editor of Pond Boss is in here for the first time. Dave Beasley, fisheries biologist from Virginia, talks about the good times not lasting forever. In other words, don't become complacent with your pond management. Brian Hoffman ties a bow around a series of articles on solar aeration or solar power for your pond. We got Patrick Simsgeiger from the left coast talking about some water secrets and some things that they do out there to manage aquatic plants. Octo talked about a 100-year, one-day flood. He's been working on a lake. He's almost got it wrapped up. At the Institute of Higher Pondology, we spent some time to go look at that lake, but he has had his hands full trying to build that lake. Let's see, we got Backyard Nature Notes with Birdman Mel, tips to attracting winter songbirds. Anyway, we really got some really cool stuff going on in Pond Boss. $35 a year. You can either call the office and get it, or you can go to pondboss.com and buy it on the store. Mike Waltrip checking in. Mike Cottrell, when does stock tilapia have bad algae? Well, Mike, what's getting ready to happen is the algae is going to wane. Now, algae really, depending on the species, filamentous algae loves temperatures that range from about 50 to 75. Below those temperatures, it tends to go away. Above those temperatures, it tends to go away. Now, there's some species that are a little bit more resistant to temperature than others. But the question you asked is when to stock tilapia. And I know you're in Texas, and they're legal in Texas. You can stock tilapia as soon as your water temperature's in the mid-60s and going up. So if you're looking at times for Palapena County, which is where you are, I'd say late April, early May. Go to the Pond Boss. Hey, if you guys are looking for resources for fish or for pond building or for lake management companies, go to pondboss.com and click on the resource guide. The pondboss.com website is a world of great information. Matter of fact, all these videos are archived on YouTube, linked from the Pond Boss Pond Boss website. So we got free articles, free videos, and of course, I do want you to write a check, put it on a credit card, $35 to subscribe to the magazine. This is the economy that fuels the magazine or fuels the business of Pond Boss. It helps to make this show available to you, along with our sponsors, Trina Mills, Aquamax Fish Foods, Texas Hunter Products, Great Fish Feeders, and other stuff, and Easy Dock of Texas, David Schneiderman. Good evening from Indiana, Mike McPherson. All right, I'm going to just kind of, because looks like my dadgum phone is not keeping up. I mean, my laptop's not keeping up on the questions like my phone is. Okay, Joby sent a few pictures via Messenger, some thoughts on a few weeds if you have a moment sometime. I'll see when I can do that. I see Ray Still checking in. Okay, David Billing, Lynette Satterthwaite, Jesse Fuller, Kim Moore. Okay, if you guys have questions, pitch them at me. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep talking about that 30,000 foot view. As you're looking at your pond, you know what I see from most of the folks that I work with that are landowners. I tell you what, here's the demographics of the majority of Pond Boss subscribers and the majority of people that I work with. They're professionals, either own a business, they're in a CEO or in management, or physicians, attorneys, or consultants that live in the city, have property in the country that's a weekend place. A lot of times they're looking forward to retiring there. Like Wayne and Josie, that's what they're looking forward to, is having this piece of property in the country. At some point, if they want to retire to that property, they can. So what I find is it's a brand new experience for folks that have never done that, and you don't know what you don't know. So what I tell folks is the very first thing you need to do is figure out what your mission is. What are the goals? What is it that you expect from that? My favorite question is, why did you buy this place? And I cannot tell you how many times I'll look a landowner in the eye and say, why did you buy this place? And I get kind of a puzzled look back from them sometimes. Well, we wanted a place in the country. Okay, why? Well, we wanted to get the kids out of town on the weekends. Okay, why? And I keep digging into that. I ask them why over and over and over. And it forces people to really figure out what their true goals are. And if you really have goals, you're going to be more likely to be productive, because I promise you that piece of acreage out in the country can be a money pit that you can pour money into and see nothing in return if you don't have a good plan. So that's why I like to start off at the 30,000 foot level. If you understand those fundamental things about what you're doing, and then you know that you don't know what you don't know. Did he really say that? You don't know what you don't know, and then you start to seek it, and that's when you go to the University of Google. And then you get so overwhelmed with information, you start saying, holy cow, I don't know what to believe and what to think and what to do. That's when you go back to that, all these stupid networks, ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox, all that crap. And then you got to sift through all this like my mama's little flour sifter, and you got to see what falls down on the wax paper you can make an apple pie out of. So you got to sift through all this stuff to figure out your truths for your property. Now, your truths are going to be based on those 5 fundamental things that I've been pounding into everybody's head. I'm not pounding anything, you're getting it. And so the moral of the story is, it's incumbent on you, caveat emptor, for you to figure out the information you need to know, and then create a workable game plan to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So here's your goals. Now, once you can sift through and figure out your goals, then you go to assess and say, here's where I am. And once you figure out where you are, then it's the University of Google, and how do I get from here to here to here to here to here? That's where it gets a little complicated. And so that's why you got to sift through this stuff and figure out what makes the most sense to you. And so let's see, I'm going to back up just a little bit. Billy Bird says, I have a good feeding problem. How long does it take to raise trophy bluegills? Well, I wish it was just simply about fish food. Billy, to raise trophy bluegills, tell me what a trophy bluegill is. I'll tell you what a trophy bluegill is to me. I think the gold standard is to crack 2 pounds. If you can crack 2 pounds, you got a trophy bluegill. Now, if 2 pound bluegill were easy, everybody would do it. But there's so many dynamics involved in trying to grow giant bluegills. I'm going to hit you with some of those since you asked the question. First of all, when you're raising bluegills, look at it like this. Depending on where you are, and Billy, you're down in southeast Texas, your bluegills are going to spawn 5 times a year. Count them, 5 times. You're going to get the bluebird days in January, February, they're going to spawn. They're going to hit you again in late March, April, hit you again in June or July, and then it's going to get too hot. Then they'll do it again in September, and then right around Thanksgiving, they'll spawn again. When bluegills spawn that much, and if their survival rate is got anything above about 5%, then you're going to see numbers so heavy that you're going to see competition so intense among the individuals that your growth rates overall are going to be slowed. So here's the thing. You got to have some fish in there that can help keep the young bluegill cold. Typically, that means largemouth bass. Billy messaged me last night, and he asked me, how do I do that? And I messaged him right back, and I said, one of the things you need to do in your pond, which is about half an acre or so, he needs about 10 male bass. Those 10 male bass can eat the majority of the slowest growing baby bluegills out of each spawn. So what we're trying to do is allow the best of the best bluegills to grow up as big as they can, as fast as they can. Now, one of the secrets to growing giant bluegill is never, ever, ever cull your biggest bluegill. Because the biggest bluegill are going to defend the nests, which means the smaller bluegill are going to have to grow up bigger than those bluegill in order to come dominate the spawning beds. So you got 2 or 3 big dilemmas to overcome to grow giant trophy bluegill. One is you got to manage their reproduction, which means that some kind of fish or human or something has got to be culling those bluegills. Typically, that's going to be in a bass-crowded lake. That's where you grow the biggest bluegills. When you got enough stunted bass that are not much bigger than about 14 or 15 inches to eat the young of your bluegill. The problem with that is you still need recruitment. Bluegill only live 6 to 8 years in the majority of ponds around the nation. So if they're only going to live that long, you got to get the maximum growth out of them with the minimal amount of competition from the best fish of the litter. So if you really think about that and ponder that a minute, that's not easy to do. Then the biggest missing piece of the equation is nutrition. I'll tell you this, back from say 2008 or 9, before that, I would talk in front of a group of people and I would tell folks this. I've probably held 5 2-pound bluegill in my life. And I'd been in business 25 years at that point. And I probably held 50 that are 1.5 pounds. But I'm going to tell you, I've held thousands that are 1.25 pounds, 1 pound to 1.25 pounds. So I know you can grow some 1 pound to 1.25 pound bluegill. And then Purina Mills came in with Dr. Mark Griffin, and I got to help with this effort some, and they really fine-tuned the fish foods. Aquamax MVP at this point is the best fish food to grow giant bluegill. And after we came out with that product and Purina started to produce it and we could feed it to the fish in lakes that are bass crowded, where we were stocking additional bluegills from hatchery ponds that we have on site, so we could cull the biggest ones and put them in there, and then feeding the heck out of them with that Aquamax fish food, that's when we started seeing some 2.25 pound bass. Bluegills. And the biggest bluegill caught in that program has been 3.25 pounds. Bruce Condello caught it in Richmond Mill Lake. So there's your 7-minute dictation PhD piled higher and deeper dissertation about how to grow trophy bluegill. Let's see what we got here. Michael Walter, is it okay to kill, cut, and leave cattails in the water, or do I need to remove? If it's feasible to remove those cattails, remove them, because if you don't, then they're going to add to the detritus, and they're going to decompose in the water. And as they decompose in the water, then they can impact the water chemistry. So, Mike, I'm going to tell you, if it's feasible where you cut those cattails, take them out. Now, everybody else, I'm going to tell you, if you've sprayed your cattails and killed them, wait till they all die and they turn brown in the dead of winter and burn them down. You can do that just like gasoline when you burn those things. Just be safe. I've done it, and it's scary sometimes. Tom Blasdale, our 7-acre lake here in southern Illinois, was built in 1973. Hey, that's the year I graduated high school. Woo-wee. So we're approaching 50 years old. Ooh, hadn't thought about that. Yep. Hard to believe. Lots of highs and lows. The highs were directly proportional to the periods of happy water. Everything is built on this foundation. That's absolutely right. You know, some of the lakes I've seen over the years, especially those with some age on them, one of the best things that can happen to those lakes is to go through a drought. Because what happens is when a lake is first built and is stocked properly, the food chain builds, the game fish grow, and over about 18 months, 2 years to 3 years, you got this. Then they intersect. And at that point, if you're not, these are the predator fish, you know, which would be bass, walleye, smallmouth, whatever. If you're not beginning to have a harvest plan, remember the fifth concept is harvest. If you're not having a harvest plan, then what will happen is these predator fish will begin to consume too many bait fish. When that happens, the relative weights begin to drop. So you'll see fish in certain size classes, and they're going to lose weight. Well, until you cull some of these and get the mouth numbers down, your food chain is going to continue to diminish. And remember, I told you a while ago, a bluegill lives to be 6 to 8 years old in most ponds south of the Mason-Dixon line. They live longer than that in northern ponds, but they don't reproduce at the same rates. They reproduce at different rates. That's nature's compensation. Up in the northern waters, bluegill may spawn twice a year, and they only have 75 days worth of growing season, where in Texas, they've got 300 days worth of growing season. You know, so nature compensates for that. So the moral of the story is if you don't have a good harvest plan, which is concept number 5, then you're going to see the food chain diminish, your predator fish diminish, and then if you don't change that within a couple of years, 3 years, then these fish have lost their very best growth potential, and you've decimated the food chain. And when that happens, there's not many ways to fix it unless you go in there and kill the fish and start over, unless you have a drought. And when a drought happens, you know, the water volume drops, the fish are concentrated, the big fish eat the little fish, the dynamics shift, because if a pond drops 3 feet, it's lost half its volume of water. Think about that. Most lakes and ponds, the top 3 feet of water is as much or more volume than the rest of the lake, with a very few exceptions. So when that happens, when you have a drought and it sits there for a while, months, maybe to a year, year and a half, and you're going to see the pond bottom soils that are exposed to the air, they're going to get new life. They're going to be aerated. They're going to break down organic matter. They're going to compost. Listen to me. When that happens and you get those flooding rains, here's the deal. If you're not in a drought, you will be. Just get ready for that. If you right now are not in a drought, you will be. Here's the converse. Every single drought ends with a flood. Think about that. If you get a normal rain, that doesn't end a drought. A flood ends a drought. When that happens, your lake is going to rise that 3 feet, 4 feet. In the case of some of the public lakes, 30 feet, 50 feet. When that happens, you flooded a lot of brand new habitat. The fish respond by heavy spawns. They're thinking, whoa, we got happy water, fresh, clean water. We got more space. We got brand new habitat. So now they're going to respond to that by inhabiting it and filling it with a population. And typically, the forage fish spawn first. When they do, the game fish come right in behind them, and those lakes flourish again for another 5 or 6 years until we reach that equilibrium, and we get here, then it happens again. You know, the problem with like Michael Gray's lake that he renovated here a month or so ago, the customer that he's got out there, it took about 50 years for that lake to fill up with silt. He had to go excavate that silt to buy another 50 years for that lake. Now, the good news for that lake is the majority of the silt that was going to come in has come in. And with good stewardship practices in the watershed, there won't be so much silt come in over the next 50 years. Looks like somebody, uh-oh, Ron Hardwin is going to make some blue heron boudin. I don't want to eat any of that, and I don't want to hear about it. All right, anybody ever try coyote decoys around their ponds to deter herons? Let's see here. There was a comment up here about herons. I guess I missed it. Oh, there it is, Christopher. I've been dealing with blue herons. How much damage can they do to my fish population? I'll tell you a story about that, Christopher. Debbie, when we first moved into Lusk Lodge, Comma 1, I'd been working on a really, really cool project in upstate New York. And we built this, Octo had built this pond right by the house, and it's a swimming pond. Now, I don't know how the fish got in it, but they did. Well, anyway, I'd set a feeder up, and I had it going off like at 8 in the morning, and then again at 4 in the afternoon. And we were starting to grow some pretty big bluegills about 8 months into it. And so Debbie called me one day, and she said, Lusk, where's your shotgun? Well, I've got a 410 shotgun my daddy gave me when I was 10 years old, 11 years old. And she said, I said, what do you want to do with my shotgun? She has this big, tall, kind of gray bird that's over there by the feeder, and it caught one of your big bluegills and it's eating it. And I said, oh, honey, don't worry about that. That's a great blue heron. That's the way they make a living, you know, and plus, it's illegal to shoot that bird. We don't want to deal with that. I don't want the game warden knocking on the door because that's bad. And so 5 or 6 days later, I got home. I'm sitting out there with her. She's drinking coffee. The feeder goes off. And that great blue heron's standing there waiting. He comes right down, snags about a 6 or 7 inch bluegill, throws it up on the bank, and he's spearing it. And I got up. She says, where are you going? So I'm going to go get my shotgun. She said, you're not going to shoot lurch, are you? She named the bird. So what I did was I changed the timer on the feeder. I changed it to where it was feeding before the sun came up and after the sun went down. So here's the point. Great blue herons are not going to diminish the population of fish in most ponds. Now, if your pond is shallow enough that a great blue heron can wade all the way across it, like a crawfish pond, they'll decimate it. But they're not going to ruin a population of fish. Now, what they will do is they'll spear some fish that, actually, we had one time spear about a 6 or 7 inch bluegill, try to swallow it whole, couldn't swallow it, and it choked to death. You know, when I saw that bird laying out there, I thought it had been shot, and I went over and picked it up. You know, and they look awful big until you pick one up, and they're kind of lanky and skinny and don't weigh much. And you could see a bluegill lodged right behind its beak where it couldn't swallow it. And I guess it earned its own demise on that deal. So, let's see here. Anthony, about the fall feed bag, is it scientifically a thing? Yes, it is. As a muskie angler, people always say muskies are putting on the fall feed bag. But my understanding of cold-blooded animals is as the body temperature drops, so does their metabolism. So are they actually eating, let's see what he says here. Are they actually eating more and getting heavier? Or are they just heavier from an entire season of eating? No, here's what happens, is each species of fish has its prime windows of metabolism rate. So in other words, in the summertime, if your water temperature there where the muskies live, if your water is in the upper 60s, lower 70s, that's kind of on the high end for a muskie to want to feed. And of course, muskies and northern pike and tiger muskies, those are apex predators, actual ambush feeders. You know, but when the water temperature starts to cool off and their metabolism rate actually goes up, that's when their feed requirements go up. And part of nature's mission is for those fish to pack on some fat that they didn't necessarily pack on in the summer. Because what's going on is all those other fish they're feeding on are getting sluggish as well. So they're easy to catch. You know, so those bluegill are slowing down a little bit. The muskies, you know, pumpkin seeds are slowing down a little bit. Shad slowing down a little bit. So it is nature's way for fish that didn't gain enough weight through the summer. Because here's the way it works. In the springtime, they spawn. Their energy is dedicated to reproduction. At that point, they're decimated, kind of like a deer. You know, right now, in a lot of parts of the planet, deer are in the rut. When they come out of the rut, after the first of the year, their necks go down, their antlers fall off, their nutrition needs to go up. Because they're through reproducing. If their nutrition doesn't go up, you're going to see it later on in the fall. Does are going to get ready to lactate. So they've got to have good nutrition. Well, it's the same principle with fish. Going into the fall, we know that their metabolism rate is going to slow down, but if they don't have stores of fat, they're going to metabolize flesh. So that means coming out of the winter, when they should be reproducing better, they're going to be focused on trying to gain the nutrition to develop their eggs. Those fish are developing eggs right now for next spring. Listen to this. All fish are developing eggs for reproduction for next spring. That's happening right now. So they need nutrition to develop eggs. They need some nutrition to store fat, because if they don't store fat, then they're going to metabolize flesh and they'll metabolize their eggs. They won't have the fecundity that they need going into the springtime. So they put on the fall feed bag. They absolutely do. Because if you also think about it, the fall should be when each pond has reached its apex of productivity. So going into the fall, if everything is reproduced like it should and everything is grown like it should, if you were to drain your pond in the fall, you should have more bait fish, more predator fish, more pounds of fish per unit of water than any time of the year. Those units are going to decline in volume and mass through the course of the fall and the winter because fish are being eaten. And it's either eat it or get eaten by it. And that's the way it works underwater, with the mission of adding fat so they can metabolize that as they need it in the winter, non-metabolized flesh, and develop eggs and the ability to reproduce next year to keep their numbers up. That was a good answer. Thanks for the good question. I'm glad that one was asked. Bill Corder says, I have a 1 acre pond with largemouth bass, bluegill, red ear, and channel cats, Edgefield, South Cadillac. I'll be raising a... Well, here goes my throat, folks. Lubricate it with some pond water. 1 acre pond, going to raise the dam next spring, which will increase it to 1.6 acres. Should I stock more fish once the dam is raised, or let natural reproduction run its course? You know what? I'm going to tell you, Bill, that's a good question. I would be tempted to stock some adult bluegills from a fish hatchery. Now, here's why I'm telling you that. You don't want to wait on your existing bluegills to create enough reproduction, which you could leave it alone and it probably would be fine. You can expedite the process and accomplish several goals by adding another 250 adult bluegills. 150 to 250 adult bluegills would make a world of difference, because they're going to come in and motivate the rest of the bluegills to spawn. They're going to spawn themselves. They're going to increase competition and build a food chain faster. You know, now otherwise I wouldn't stock any more. I wouldn't stock any bass. I wouldn't stock any more red ears. I wouldn't stock any more channel cat. Channel cat in a pond like that are a put and take fish. So if you want more channel cat, then stock more channel cat. But I definitely would stock another 150 to 250 bluegill adults, meaning 5 to 6 to 7 inches long or bigger if you can get them and you don't mind paying the price for that. So I'd be real tempted. So I'd say yes, I'd do that. Mike McPherson, my goal is to build a life that I don't need a vacation from. I love that statement. I want to build a life I don't need a vacation from. Holy cow. That is a stellar comment. I love that. I'm looking for some help finding grass shrimp that will survive an Indiana winter. Anyone tuned in that can assist me with my search? Check with Matt Rail, American Pond Management in Rushville. Matt Rail, R-A-Y-L. And Matt, if you're watching, message Mike McPherson. He needs to talk to you. He could tell you about that. Let's see, Tim Jackson, he's in South Carolina. Man, what a football game. Notre Dame and Clemson. I know you're kind of sick to your stomach because you're a Clemson guy, but that was an iconic college football game. I watched my Texas Aggies play. They did good, but holy cow, when I flipped over and watched that Clemson-Notre Dame game, you know, I don't have a dog in that hunt other than my friend Tim Jackson. And I just love Dabo Swinney. That was such a fun, energizing game to watch. You know, my take on college football is this. and of course, 2020 doesn't count. I'm ready to kick 2020 in the ass, send it out the door, and say adios and never look back on 2020 again. Can I have an amen? Yep, there's a bunch of you out there that think the same way. But watching college football, here's what I love about it. A college football team, you've got 50 or 60 post-adolescent young men in full-grown men's bodies. And the coaches have got to make them perform at peak capacity, peak ability for 60 minutes, 12 to 13 times a year. They can't do it. And I love that about college football. Ron Ardoin, is it a good idea to tag and keep records on bluegill and red ear? Ron, some people like to do that. What I like to do with bluegill is look at the overall relative weights and weigh and measure fish and then track those fish as a population more so than individuals. But I'm going to tell you, there are quite a few people out there that will Floyd tag bluegills and red ear and just monitor their growth rates. I'm not such a big fan of that, but I'm not opposed to it. And the reason I'm not is because their population is so dynamic, it ebbs and flows so much that if I were going to tag bluegills, I'd be tagging them at a minimum of 10 inches in length. And by that time, they're already 5 years old, 6 years old, for the most part. Paul Tuzzolino, hey, the herring calls my pond. Yeah, buddy, I got that deal. All right, let's see. Eli Gaddy, I heard that it's bad to have warmouth in a pond. Is this true? They're a blast on the fly rod, though. Strong fighters. I don't think they're bad. Here's what I think about warmouth, goggle eye, chickapin perch, they call them in Louisiana. Warmouth are a sunfish with a big mouth that like more of a stream environment and shallow pools, but they'll live in a pond. Now, the reason I like them is because they diversify fishery and they don't reproduce to the point that they're highly competitive with the rest of the fishery. I see them as a bonus fish. So I don't think it's bad at all to have a few warmouth. In fact, when we were shocking my catfish pond that's adjacent to a little creek that connects with Lake Texoma, and every once in a while it floods, we shocked up about a 6 or 7 inch warmouth. I thought it was cool. I like it. But we shocked up one, And we got hundreds of bluegills. Big Daddy says, thank goodness the LSU Bama game was canceled. Yeah, I think there's a little revenge would have been there. This is just such a weird year. I'm ready to say goodbye. Vito, this should be a required biology course in every campus across the nation, and I approve this message. Well, there you go. That's it. Well, hey, listen, I'm getting ready to depart, go home, spend a little time with the Queen. Just to let you guys know, it's in the magazine, this issue. Speaking of the magazine, Pond Boss, hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in this comment slot. Click like, share this to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and the Pond Boss mug. Here it is right here. That knows how to keep hot things hot and cold things cold. I don't know how it knows, but it does. But what I'm going to leave you with is I was listening to a Randy Travis song, Three Wooden Crosses, and I'm going to leave you with that. It's not what you take when you leave this world behind you. It's what you leave behind you when you go. I so believe that. And it's incumbent on guys like me to share what I know, and I love to do that. I want to challenge you and encourage you to do the same thing. Everybody here has got something to offer, and share it. And I tell you, it makes you feel better. It makes the world a better place. And it makes us all better stewards of whatever it is we know something about. So it's an honor to be able to share this with you folks and spend time with you. And it's entertaining for me to read the questions, and I hope it's entertaining for you. And I think I'm going to kind of wrap it up with that and just encourage you to see it like that. So until next Wednesday, let's see, next Wednesday, I think I'm still in town next week. Yeah, I think I'm in town next Wednesday. It'll be the following Wednesday that I'll be gone because we're going to go spend Thanksgiving with family. So until next week, next Wednesday, live, 6:30 to 7:30 here, I'm going to tell you adios. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next week.